Hello everyone. This is the second video of a 3-video series on risk management for non-profit organizations. In the previous one, I started to explain ViStA Risk Management Framework. We briefly went through what risk is, why it is important for the non-profit organizations, and finally, positive and negative risk. Because negative risk, this is where most of the leaders, executive directors, and board members and the nonprofit leaders focus on, but positive risk, which can also be named as opportunities, are as important as the other ones. Because for sustainable growth, positive risks and opportunities are more important. So let me jump to the slides. And we started to talk about ViStA Risk Management Framework. And this was the overall framework, how it looked like. I briefly explained the first stage, vision, strategies, and actions. We call it ViStA Circle. And the second stage, we call it risk management triangle. So in traditional risk management tools, there are two parameters, the probability and the impact or the consequence of the risk. We wanted to add a third dimension. We call it level of control. So the risk management triangle includes three parameters: impact, probability, and control. And the next stage is, we call it stakeholder trio. So you have to manage your stakeholders properly to have a successful risk management in your organization. Remember, unsuccessful stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement was one of the reasons of management-related risks in nonprofit organizations. And we group stakeholders in three categories: sponsors and regulators. So sponsors are funders, corporate sponsors, individual donors, every stakeholder who has a financial contribution to your organization. And naturally, they have a voice. They should have a voice in your governance and in your risk management plan. And regulators. Regulators can be local governments, federal government, provincial government, or if you're an international organization, you also need to think about the regulators in the countries that you operate. The second group of stakeholder is beneficiaries, the clients who use your services, and the whole society, whole community is in this group. Everyone who benefits directly or indirectly from your services. And finally, the third group of stakeholder is service providers, partners, staff, volunteers, subcontractors, consultants, anyone who contributes to the delivery of the services. So our suggestion is to focus on these three stakeholder groups while developing your risk management plan. And finally, this is the fourth level. As you can see, the first three stages, the ViStA circle and the triangle and the stakeholder circle. And then we have those 5 layers. At the bottom, we have the risk identification. Everything starts with identifying the risk, negative risks and positive risks. The second phase is risk analysis. You have to analyze because you have to prioritize risk. You cannot focus on hundreds of risks at the same time. You can only focus maybe 5, 10 risks. So you have to analyze and identify which ones are more important for your organization. Finally, the third stage is risk treatment. Okay, so risk treatment, I will talk more about this in the following slides. It's slightly different for negative risks and positive risks. And another new thing that we introduced in our framework is risk mapping, visualizing your positive and negative risks. And I will explain briefly why is it essential. Why is it so powerful for decision makers in your organization? It is closely related about how our brain functions. And the final stage is risk governance. We emphasized risk governance, the importance of risk governance and risk management, because the involvement, the commitment of the decision makers, the top level, the board members, and the management team is essential for the success of risk management. So risk governance is a special chapter in our book, and it's a special topic in the framework. Now, how are we going to implement this framework? I'm going to show you some couple of practical tools that you can start immediately utilizing in your organization. So far, it was the theory, the scientific background of the framework. Now I'm going to start talking about some practical tools that you can utilize. Now, this is one of the charts we use. So as you can see, there are two dimensions. The vertical dimension is the probability, which is very similar to the other risk management tools. So the probability is between 0 and 100. And we have, at the horizontal axis, we have the impact. As you can see, there are positive and negative numbers here, because risk has positive and negative components. So some risks, also opportunities, can have positive impact in your organization, and some others may have negative impact. So I put two examples here, and as you can see, they are different sized circles, and the size of the circle indicates the level of control we have over the risk. So meaning risk A, we have more control, and risk B, we have limited control. So risk B is something that we cannot control. Let's spend a little bit more time in understanding what A and B means. So A, very high probability, almost 90% or 80%. And if it happens, if it occurs, then the impact is very, very negative, very high negative. Again, around 80 or 90. And the size of the circle indicates how much control we have. This is something we can definitely control. So imagine that one of your specialists is planning to quit her job and move to another company or organization. So the probability is very high. You can see this, okay? And maybe she even told you that. And the impact will be severe, will be very highly negative, because she's the only specialist in your organization. But this is something you can control. You can offer her some additional compensation, some benefits, recognition, or I don't know, a promotion, or you can look for another specialist. So you have lots of things that you can do to deal with risk A. Let's say risk B, let's say this is a government policy that will create new grant opportunities for nonprofit organizations, and your organization can benefit from it. The probability is moderate. The impact is moderate too, because it's not a huge grant, and you have very limited control over it. But at the end, it's a positive risk. It has a positive impact on your organization. Now, and some of you may be familiar with those colors. So where we don't want anything in the red zone. Okay, so we don't want highly probable, highly likely, negative, impactful risks. And we also don't want low probability and low impact risks. We can eliminate them. So it's a brief summary for decision makers to see everything on one chart. And in this chart, you can also use this mapping technique to see the longitudinal progress, how you have done in the previous years and how you have done in the last decade, and compare your performance now. So those three colors, blue, green, and red, are three different types of risks. And if you look at the blue one, so the blue one has very low probability and very low positive impact, but you have high level of control. And in 2018, it had a very high positive impact and moderate probability. In 2019, it came to that point, and in 2020, you have more control, but the impact and the probability decreased significantly. So for Greenland, for example, initially it was a negative impact. Okay, let's see a negotiation, a conflict with the local government. Okay, the probability was very high and the impact was moderately negative. And in 2019, you succeeded to reverse this picture and convert negative impact to positive impact. So this is the mindset of risk manager we are looking for. So always try to convert negative risks into positive opportunities. Is it doable? Yes, it is. There are tons of good examples of organizations. So risk mapping can also help you to categorize your risks. We will see in the following slides the categories, the types of risks. So human resources management risks, you can put them in same group. You can use color coding, and it's a powerful tool to communicate with your decision makers. So in a regular non-profit organization, there are over 200 risk items. 200. And no human brain can memorize, manage, remember every detail of those 200 risk items. But charts that, similar to what just I showed you, can make a huge difference for decision makers, right? So they can grab the status immediately and make the right decisions for the organization. Now, this is a very helpful, very useful example for you. You can recategorize risks under 6 topics: operational, human resources, related, legal, financial, strategic, and infrastructure and equipment. Not all of them may be applicable to your organization. If this is the case, you can just use the ones that are applicable. And the sub-items, they are just examples, but some of them may be relevant to your organization. But you can come up with your own list too. So risk categorization is essential in the risk identification and analysis case, and you can develop those lists with consultants, but also with your team, because they have that understanding. So how are we going to treat the risk? Okay, so imagine there is a negative risk, high likely and high negative impact. So we try to push it to the lower corner of the negative side, meaning reduce the probability, reduce the impact, and increase our level of control. Of course, this is an ideal case. We may not succeed in all 3 areas, but this is the objective of the risk manager. For positive risk, what we try to do is to push risks to the upper corner, because we want to increase the probability and increase the level of positive impact. We also want to increase the size of the circle in both cases, in both negative and positive zones, because we want to be able to control the risk. So there are two tools, and there is another simple tool, okay? So we look at the 2 domains, internal or external. Is the risk internal or external? Is the risk related to human factors or other factors? So as you can see, there are 4 zones, and some risks can be a combination of those risks. Like external, like look at number 3. It's a kind of combination of all 4, and it's a practical visual. Thank you.